Well, I don't know about you, but there are some concerns that I think any reasonable person would have. We start looking at, well, what's going on out there? We've got riots. You can call them mostly peaceful protests, but that's a lie. That's a twisting of the truth. I mean, spin doctors. That's all that most newscasters and media people are. They're spin doctors. They're spinning the lie, saying, by the lie. And here's how you do it. You twist the truth. It's iniquity, twisting. Spin it. Spin it to what sounds like it's a good idea to you. What's happening though is the average person who's only getting fed the spin and the lies is being deceived. Those that are willing to pray and those that are willing to check out other possibilities and go out and look at other media from, on the internet, YouTube, and other, you get to see a different picture. And I watched the news here in our hometown when they had the riots. It wasn't mostly peaceful. They're throwing things, they're smashing windows, they're setting things on fire. That's not mostly peaceful. That's rioting. Now, for the peaceful people, I believe there were. I think there are people who had a really good heart and really wanted to see some good change. And I think most of us wanted to see some change. We don't necessarily think defunding the police is the best idea. We training them and getting the best officers in place and the right tools. But there's a whole nother part of this whole teaching of soundness of doctrine that people don't want. What about personal responsibility? Oh, we don't believe in that. We want the police officers to have to be responsible and accountable. But the individual citizen that's going to break the law, now they don't have to have any accountability. They have the right to create havoc. I don't know about you, but creating havoc doesn't sound like it's a really good idea. Okay, I'm pulled over and I'm told to step out of the car, and I refuse to. Is that going to make the police officer happy? Make them feel safe? If I don't put my hands where they can see them, is that going to make them happy? And oh, okay, well, you can do whatever you want. That's stupid, man. The lack of compliance, the lack of working with the authorized authority, whether they're right or wrong in their stop or their interjection into our life. Let the courts decide that. Our duty, our responsibility to ourselves is to be smart. Don't be dumb in public. Dip. That's what I had a professor say. People are dips. Dumb in public. They go down for being dumb in public. Many times officers are willing to let people off with a warning if they see that you're complying and you're working with them. Now, I get it. There are some racist police officers I've met. My wife being Hispanic, we've had some challenges. We have family members who have encountered some racial profiling and some wrong things that came out of that. And I believe every one of those cops are a total disgrace to the profession of law enforcement. And I think every cop that helps promote that and the code of blue and won't come out against those guys are equally criminal and equally to be blamed for bad behavior. I think that one of the things that must happen is police must be responsible and say there is no place in our unit for a person like you. Bye. Or file charges themselves. The other problem is we have unions. And the problem with unions, well, they're not doing the job that they used to do, which was to protect the employee from wrongful termination. They've become the ones that make it impossible for owners and management to weed out the bad and keep productivity and morale at a high, because now you can't do anything because the unions don't let you do anything. And so that's another problem. That's another reform that needs to take place, not only in law enforcement, but in a lot of industries where the union has become corrupted. It's no longer for the best interest of everyone involved, especially for the people that they're supposed to be representing. But that's another story. So when I don't comply, I create problems. And when there are bad cops, that's going to create problems. Put the two together, you're going to have a situation. You have a right to protest the government, but you don't have a right to go up to a private citizen business or their home and protest them, let alone riot and threaten and damage, break, and steal. That's a crime. And what's sad is lawlessness is prevailing. And because of lawlessness, the love of many are going to grow cold, according to scripture. So what I'm seeing and hearing is there's a lot of people who are starting to become more and more angry and more afraid of what's really going on. And their attitudes are beginning to shift. Many who would have gladly said Black Life Matters today, talking to them, back in 2016, they were saying it. Today, they're saying, no, it doesn't matter anymore because this is going out of control. Well, it's mainly the movement. BLM is a Marxist revolutionary movement. Antifa, they're Marxist communists. At the end of the day, they want to burn it down the system. They want to get rid of the Constitution in America. And they want to institute a socialist program. Now, socialism sounds good till you find out it can't be done. And then that's when the iron fist of communism, of a dictatorship, has to come into play. Socialism just doesn't work. Not true socialism. And what's trying to be brought into play is not being done through the will of the people, through democracy, but through rebellion, through force, through a revolution. So what happens when the opposition says, since we can no longer talk, reason, or debate, we have to exchange violence for violence? What's going to happen? That's what I'm afraid. See, I really see racial war erupting. And it's not going to matter whether you are good or not. People are going to just kill and maim and destroy based on the color or ethnicity of where you're coming from. And that's sad for many of us who are in blended families. Sad for anybody, really. It's going to be sad. Because now I'm beginning to see, and people I've known for years who have been very anti-racist, they don't care anymore. They don't care. Their heart, their love has just grown cold because of the laws. And that's what Satan wants. And we're watching this precipitate. People aren't being allowed to defend their homes. They're being arrested. And they're being the ones who go to jail for defending their business or their homes. That's unconstitutional. That's against the premise of fairness and law, democracy. It's anti everything American. And yet that's being promoted by one party. And I'm afraid at some point, the hurt, the fear, and the destruction is going to backfire, and they may get the revolution. And I hate to see it because there's going to be a lot of innocent bloodshed. And maybe they'll win, maybe they'll lose. It's going to determine probably at that point who's most well funded and best armed and best tactics and most resolved to do whatever it has to be to win. Which makes me think about this is dangerous because when you have someone like Soros who's bought up to a lot of firearm manufacturers and ammunition, and he's got billions of dollars to pay for the overthrow of our Constitution, to overthrow businesses and homes, and wreak havoc and pay people to do that. Wow. So this is dangerous. We're living in the most perilous of times. I don't see a good outcome unless we have a great revival where we see 75% or more of the people truly become born again, spirit filled, loving God, disciples of Jesus, who are going to be sound mind, sound reason, have love for God, love for one another, and honor the Constitution that our forefathers put together. Were those men perfect? No. In every era, there's been people who have done things that down the road, others have said, this is no longer a good idea. And sometimes that comes about changed peacefully, and sometimes it doesn't. Well, revolution tossing the tea into the bay led to bloodshed. That was a war. And for America, they won. But it came at a price. A lot of people died on both sides of the equation. The Civil War came about. And again, on both sides of the equation, there was bloodshed. A lot of people suffered. Some people were just caught. They were in the wrong place at the wrong time. They had no choice but to defend what they perceived was important to defend. And looking at things from their perspective, they felt that they were justified. Was it a righteous war? Well, Democrats never thought so for many, many years. So that's a sad thing. The South lost, and then they put a lot of different, like Jim Crow laws, and they did a lot of things to hurt people of color, the Black community especially. And there was a lot of wrongs that went on. You know, if we study history, we see there's a party that's always been the bad guys. But today they're trying to tell us they're the good guys and the other party, the bad guys. They spin the lie into what they call the truth. Spin, twist. Twisting is a better word for it because, again, the word iniquity, the word is a twist. Iniquity is something God hates. That twisting to make something evil appear to sound good, making good in the truth sounding like a lie and bad. That's iniquity. So at some point, we may see ourselves in an actual civil war. Only this time, it's not going to be North versus South. It's going to be neighbor versus neighbor. What's your party affiliation? Those are on one side, those on another, and those in the middle. I don't know if there'll be middle ground allowed. So what's going to happen? Unless God prevails, unless God can get the honor that's due him, unless we have revival, like I said, or we have great change of heart and attitude, I see the revolution of bloodshed becoming more and more likely. And the outcome may not be, well, even if good wins, not without cost. If evil wins, won't be at cost as well, and then hardship. And well, those are the things that many of us hope never happen. Many of our service men and women fought and gave up their lives to make sure that this would never take place, that our Constitution would stand and would be honored. It's a shame that so many are not keeping their oath of office. And I fault all of those who fell to stand up and hold them accountable and remove them for breach of oath of office. They should be taken and removed. That's what needs to happen. But here's the problem that seems to be going on. In larger areas, larger cities seem to have more social programs available. There's a lot more programs and well, in some places a lot more churches that will help people. So people who are struggling, don't usually go into more rural communities because there's not as many resources. And so they end up being congregated in population centers. And if you're a one party, you don't want them to ever leave the need. You want them always needing your handout to keep you elected. Because basically, what you're offering in policy doesn't really benefit anybody unless they believe that they're getting something for nothing. And some of those people desperately need and deserve every handout we can give them. Absolutely. But what happens when we cripple a generation or a group of people to the point that they are no longer confident in who they are as a human being that can excel and get out of dire circumstances, and then they feel they have to vote for the most wicked of parties in order to maintain their livelihood. See, in our state, only 2 counties put the Democrats in control. 2 population bases. The rest, if it were left up to that, you had to win X number of the counties, just like in the Electoral College, you wouldn't see most of these cities, most of these states Democratic. But like many people, I'm beginning to believe with all my heart that, like in California, our neighbor, we used to think Californian people were, well, stupid to vote for what they get. But most of us are beginning to realize I don't think these people are really that dumb, that stupid. I think they've had the election stolen many times over. And many have just kind of given up and said there's no way to beat this system of mail-in and cheating elections. And we've got a large population of needy people, and we're being catered to at the cost of everybody else. And at the same time, we would all want to take care of those who are truly in need. But we see the abuse of the system. And so when these population centers can become uh, strong, they overshadow everybody else in their state. And then again, the resources don't get to get spread evenly for education or anything else. It gets so the rural communities often suffer. But without those rural communities, well, you may not have milk in your communities and certain vegetation and other things that you need to survive in the inner city. So we're at a conflict. The same thing in the United States. We're spread out. We got large populations based states that want to control everybody else's life without regard to what other people need and what they want and what they don't like, because they want to force everybody to do what they want. They don't want true democracy. And they forget we're a republic where every state should have equal representation. That's why you get 2 senators, so that no one state gets to control the Senate. Now, the House, well, they get more representative population. So Congress does have more say from the larger states because they got more representatives. But they want to go ahead and offset that so that they can control both Congress and the Senate and the courts. And of course, they'd like to be in charge of the White House. And I used to like the idea that we had 2 parties. They only want one. Now, what are we going to do? Like I said, we're going to have to pray for revival. We're going to have to go make disciples, or we don't have a prayer of a chance for ourselves, for our children, our grandchildren in the very near future. And it may already be too late. I hope not. I pray that it isn't. Because with God, he's never too late. Think of Lazarus. And church, you are supposed to be the salt of the earth. Don't be compromised. Come on, Christian. Be true. Don't just be Christian in name. Be like Jesus, wanting the Father's will in all. that we say, think, and do. Well, those are my thoughts for today. Probably not popular, but nonetheless, I'm going to share my heart and call us to action that we need revival. And that doesn't happen mysteriously. It happens when we as individuals get up and go out and lead others to Christ and make disciples.